Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe unserer Reihe Zeit des Exils. In dieser Reihe sprechen wir mit Menschen, die in Deutschland eine neue Heimat gefunden haben, über die Erfahrungen von Flucht, Fremde und Ankommen. Unser heutiger Interviewpartner in den Berliner Büros der Körber-Stiftung ist der syrische Konzeptkünstler und Kulturaktivist Khaled Barakeh. Nach Stationen in Odense in Dänemark und in Frankfurt lebt und arbeitet er mittlerweile in Berlin. 2018 war Khaled Barakeh mit der Ausstellung Die Blaue Stunde in Hamburg bei den Tagen des Exils zu Gast, dem Veranstaltungsprogramm der Körber-Stiftung, das Menschen im Exil eine Plattform gibt. In diesem Kontext stellte Khaled Barakeh auch sein Projekt Syria Cultural Index vor, eine Online-Plattform zur Unterstützung syrischer Künstler weltweit. Heute interviewt ihn die Kulturjournalistin Melanie von Bismarck über sein Schaffen.
Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Gespräch mit Khaled Barakeh. Welcome, Khaled. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Wir möchten sprechen über seine Kunst heute, die immer wieder thematisch kreist um Migration und Machtstrukturen, die damit zu tun haben und die immer wieder in den Blick nimmt, die Opfer von Krieg und Flucht und Exil. Und wir möchten sprechen über die vielen Initiativen, die er hier in Berlin betreibt, um andere syrische Künstler im Exil zu unterstützen. So, I would like to start with a recent and very significant event. In January, the Koblenz Higher Regional Court pronounced a groundbreaking verdict against two former members of the Syrian regime. And one of them was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against humanity. And this is the world's first trial on state torture in Syria, a very historical moment. So my question is a personal one. What were your feelings? What did you feel when you first heard about this verdict?
When I heard of the verdict first, I actually decided to turn to Facebook and to read what the victims and families of the victims' opinion about it, because I had my personal feeling, but I think what matters for me was all the time, or the reference, is how they feel about it, because this is what that kind of emphasize even, and me feeling it in the right way. I felt actually it's the first step toward justice. I felt it's the first step in the right direction, and because I was just hoping this will continue as a domino effect, and maybe other countries or cities also will do the same. Maybe it will set an example as well to what could be the future in Syria.
You were watching this court case very intensely. You were accompanying the whole process, and you had an installation right in front of the courthouse with the name Mute. And it shows, I think, 49 figures. Whom do they represent, and what was the idea behind it?
The idea started during the lockdown. We couldn't meet, gather, demonstrate, which means that we can't raise our voices, we can't channel any message we want to. And there was parallel to this, that trial is happening as well in Koblenz. I sent a call to Syrian artists and activists living in diaspora to send me their personal clothes. And I shaped through their clothes, their bodies, trying to kind of highlighting their absence or their presence by their absence, because there was no chance to be part of the trial, to be present there, also for them or their families. And the idea was to bring us there, to kind of hear what's happening inside, and to say it's our trial. We have the right to know what's happening, and to send messages as well to people inside about the peaceful demonstration, that how the whole revolution, what's so-called now a war, which I understand it's a proxy war. So we wanted to send the messages, strong messages, also to the judge and everyone sitting inside the courtroom, how everything started one day in Syria as a peaceful revolution.
So does this verdict have any impact, any influence on your work as an artist and an activist?
Big time, actually. It changed kind of my whole approach toward what I'm doing. Since the beginning of the Syrian revolution, since 2011, I was trying to make advocacy through my artwork. I tried to bring attention, to use artistic language to bring our voices to the world. After many years, everyone, I think, know about Syria today, and not only today, before. And literally our plot covered all screens, right? Like everyone saw our death, because it's one of the most documented events or revolution in the modern history. I felt nothing has changed. Like, we made the advocacy, and we screamed and we cried and we died in front of cameras, and still the public opinion didn't affect the political decisions. So with this specific trial, I feel like there's a new hope, right? Which is the justice system. So now through my artwork, I'm kind of focusing a lot on the kind of parallel lines between legal system and artistic approach. So hopefully that will be the kind of new way of thinking to approach my practice in the future.
At this point, I would like to add some notes on your artistic background. Khaled studied painting in Damascus, where he graduated in 2005, and after being forced into migration, he came to Denmark, where he did his master in Odense at the Funen Art Academy in conceptual social political art in 2008. After that, he studied in Frankfurt at the Städel Schule and then moved to Berlin in 2015. His work is represented in several international collections and could be seen in many exhibitions. So if we look at your artworks, often two questions seem to stand in the center. How can we deal with the suffering of others? And how can we avoid voyeurism in showing the victims of war? And there's one good example, I think. It's a work you've done in 2014. It's a series of collages called The Untitled Images, which show photographs of people with dead bodies in their arms, but instead of the bodies, we just see a white silhouette. Maybe you can tell us more about this.
One of the challenges I faced is how can we present ourselves and while making advocacy, while at the same time protecting people's dignity, right? Because in the West here, for example, if there's any death or even car accident, so they don't show the images, right? They deal with it in a very respectful way, which I appreciate. At the same time, reality of war is ugly. How can we show this reality to form public opinion, but while considering still the victims at first place? So the approach for me was to peel off the victim's picture of the photos, and that will allow people to focus on those who are still alive, first of all, who have the loss, and will allow these images to be circulated in the Western media or wherever, or in museums or galleries, because it doesn't have this immediate effect of bloody images. Because even our psychological system, I think, when we see such an images, we try to look but not look, right? Like we try to avoid to look to protect ourselves as well from graphical images. And that was kind of my approach toward representation of victims in media and in art, which is, I think, something apparently followed my practice or was present in my practice without even having a strong decision about it in advance. But I felt it's very important, this self-censorship kind of, or can censorship anyway become positive in this way? And I felt, yes, maybe this will be the approach of allowing the victims to present their photos without having them in the picture as well.
A question of dignity.
Exactly, yeah.
There's another work I would like to show and talk about. It's called Regarding the Pain of Others. It's done in 2013, and it consists of parts of wood and rusty nails neatly arranged on the floor in a very minimalistic art language. Only if you know the background of the work, you see that it contrasts sharply with the high emotionality of the work, because it's parts of a beer, also einer Bahre. Can you tell us about the idea and how it came into being?
In 2013, Syria was start disappearing from first pages in the media, right? So it's not an important news anymore. The death of tens of hundreds of people becomes kind of everyday news. So feelings, emotion get numbed, I think, by hearing the same news again and again. I was amazed all the time by demonstration and how brave people were. So I wanted to present that moment of braveness, of people going to celebrate in the street, not to celebrate the death of someone, which is funerals when they hold someone in their shoulder when they die, because that was the only events where they're allowed to meet and together as well, without calling it a demonstration. So I want to celebrate this bravery of doing this action, even there's a chance that they might get killed. And what they were doing, they were celebrating actually the freedom. And I felt I want to bring that specific object here. And for me as well, not only to tell people, but because I wanted to connect to it, even from a distance, to that event, to that demonstration in the street. I contacted someone from the Free Syrian Army. It took like long journey until they managed to smuggle the na'ash, the open caskets. And they send it after 2-3 months. They smuggle it through to Jordan and they send it to me, to here. And they send me also a log of 135 people who were carried in this object. So for me, it was really emotional, right? Because I have it in my studio at the beginning. I didn't even dare to touch it. I was just looking at it all the time, considering its history. Then I tried to kind of reform it or retransform it to become something else, which is a throne, which is what people fighting for, their freedom and the power again to the people. And I wanted to use artistic language that is close to the Western mind in a way that they can relate to, because I think this is something I do a lot through my work. I understand the language here. I think I'm able to speak the artistic language that can communicate with the surrounding, which is what I want to do. I want to make advocacy for the specific matters and try to balance kind of the emotional part that I feel towards it with its presentation as well. So that was kind of my answer, I think, kind of presenting it almost into like an anthropological way in a museum, like, you know, all the pieces next to each other. Because after I built the throne, I didn't dare to throw out all the old pieces or all the rest of the pieces that remain of the wood, or even the dust of the wood or the nails. So I kept everything because it has the emotional value for me, and I present it around the throne and the floor in a way kind of showing it's still an action in process, right? The throne is not standing. The power is through all the sacrifice and death of people is still it's still long way to go, and it's still not there. So that's why I decided to show it leaning kind of in its back, in a hope that one day we'll give it as a gift to any next president will come, right? So they can, remember this power, where it comes from, when it's shifted, hopefully, to the people.
Before shifting here to your initiatives and your projects, I would like to ask you how your situation was, your artistic situation in Syria before you left the country. Could you do what you wanted? Have you been forced to do things you did not want to do?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, first things that I didn't want to do in the army, because I had to do the military service when I was 18, because it's mandatory to everyone. So I forced to pen the president picture, Hafez al-Assad, over and over in the military pace, because I was good and this is how actually I became an artist. This is how I even practice calligraphy and painting in general. So I was forced into this, right? Like, because you can't say no for that. But in the art academy, I think there was another type of forcement, which is the established structure in general in the educational system that kind of guide you in specific direction, that I think it's affected by the general political environment in Syria, not only in the art academy or in the Ministry of Culture. But I think, as you may know, there's 3 topics that is better not to touch, right? Which is religion, politics, and sex in the region. Which is weird, because if you don't talk about any of these things, like what else to talk about, right? In an area it's full of I wouldn't say complexity or problems, but of tension. And these 3 topics are very, very present in our life and should be discussed in a way to open up public discourse and opinion toward different matters. So there wasn't an enforcement, but there was direction, kind of, also affected by the art market back then, because it wasn't so open like the art market. And we didn't have so much connection to the Western art world. It was because Syria was part of the Soviet Union camp before, and was kind of, has its own kind of local system and gallery and art world. So if you want to be successful in that kind of sphere, you have to go in a specific direction. So this is the hidden enforcement. So, but there was no direct enforcement to go in one direction, I think. But of course, the missing freedom affect everything. And what does it mean to be an artist or to practice art if you are not free, right? Like, it's just contradict even the purpose of doing art, because it's about self-expression and being free and creating kind of your imagination into the real world, or your fantasies, bringing it to the reality so other people can live their fantasies through your fantasy as an artist, so they can dare to do so in all kind of aspects. So it took me a while until I break this wall inside of me, which I think it's still there, the wall of censorship that was, kind of embedded within us.
So when you came to Europe, I imagine that there were other challenges you had to conquer, you had to get over to be able to practice your artistic work or your cultural management work here in Germany. What were these challenges? What were the main challenges?
How long do we have? Because challenges are very long. So no, I think really there's two levels. Let me simplify. There's two levels of challenges. There's challenges of arriving to a new country like anyone else in the world. This is also easier when you decide to move somewhere, right? It's more difficult when you are forced to be somewhere you didn't choose. So that's the first level. Then there's the second level, which is being an artist, which has its own kind of structure and difficulties and universe as well. So the challenges, I think they came from both parts, right? So I don't want to speak about me only. I want to speak also on like behalf of other artists that I know of their stories, at least, or their challenges. So all the time becoming the new person in a new city, or like the new boy in the school, in the sense of you don't understand what is what and how things are structured. And for me, of course, language was a challenge. Finding house was a challenge. Finding studio was a challenge. Losing my network and was a challenge. Or establishing new network was a challenge. Also, how the art world is perceived in the West is based on the Western perspective, right, in general, which doesn't consider necessarily other culture in the same perspective, right? Because everything happening on the West is knowledge, everything happening in the North is knowledge, everything happening in the South is culture, or this is how they see it here. So it was a challenge, how can I bring my culture, my artistic language, and this is exactly what I'm talking about, to create it as a form of knowledge that people here can appreciate, right? Because you might be the most successful artist in your country because this is what considered art. This is what is celebrated as art, as culture, as the development of historical artistic practice. But then you kind of get confronted with the Western understanding or valuing what is art and what is not, or what is good and what is bad. So that was also a challenge. There was a challenge of to whom I'm producing. Because if I'm producing to the Syrians, I have to produce in a specific way that I think it's celebrated there, it's appreciated, because this is the understanding of art. Back then, I think now it's changed. But if I want to use the Western language, the Western understanding of contemporary art today, it's completely different language. And I had to make a decision which direction to go. I made a quick decision, I think. I decided to be here and now. I decided to present for the physical surrounding, because I have a problem with virtual world and social media, etc. And then you have the challenges of being labeled, of having the stigma of, you know, being the refugee artist. You have the expectation of the topics that you deal with, because all the time you are expected to be a representative of your community or problems. And this is something really, to be honest, even before Syria, it kind of bothered me a little bit. Going to the most, you know, to the biggest museums in different parts of the world, whenever we see artists from global south, we see their work through problems, right? So there's no celebration of abstraction in Africa, for example, or in a specific country. I don't want to say Africa as a continent, but there's no celebration of, I don't know, work that deals with love, with any topic that is not necessarily our problems, right? So all the time we are portrayed, or we kind of requested to be portrayed through, like, show me your suffering, show me your blood, show me your pain, show me your problems. But what if I want to show you something else that it doesn't really fit into kind of expectation of me? I didn't feel it's celebrated enough, and it's a little bit sad that all the time it requires a conflict, a war, a catastrophe to start being presented in the Western world.
Does it get better with the years?
I think it gets better because artists start having different understanding and start kind of integrated in their surrounding. But still, it's a long way to go, I think.
Could you line out the ideas of CoCulture, which you are the founder of?
CoCulture is a project started in 2015 with so-called refugee crisis. I call it European crisis because refugee crisis was and still happening today, considering what's happening in Ukraine, for example. And I don't think it will end. I think it will be a crisis that we will all the time face, unfortunately, with the establishment of the political structure we have after the Second World War. So anyway, but that's another topic. So I thought there's a need even of existing on the digital world, because we became all over the world, right? So it started first actually with me being in Europe since a while and having my network, Syrian arriving to Germany and elsewhere in 2015. People asked me to nominate some artists for shows or for opportunities or funds or different things. I ended up nominating people I know or know of their work. I felt it's not fair. How can we democratize this? I thought to do a Google poll, send it to friends, who send it to their friends, has basic questions. Your name, your location, your email. Do you want us to reach out to you if you have if we hear of an opportunity? This is how everything started. And then there was a open call to apply for project fund. So I thought, let's turn this into a mobile app instead of having Google Poll. And then I didn't meet the deadline, so I ended up with a project proposal of creating an online platform for Syrian artists to support them and presenting their work in the world, called Syria Cultural Index. I also didn't meet the deadline, as I mentioned, so I have this project proposal. I posted on Facebook. I tagged everyone I know from the cultural sector. I met the fund director in Ford Foundation here, actually, just in the next block in Berlin. There was an event called Berlin-Beirut, and then we shake hands, we kind of get introduced to each other, and she heard of the project through this post on Facebook, and then we start talking, and we decided to have an organization called Syria Cultural Index, has one project called Syria Cultural Index. We established a fine. They sent us the money from the state. We lost the money. For 3 months, we didn't know where the money is. So we figured out the corresponding bank of our bank blocked the money because the initiative has the word Syria or has members with Syrian background. So we had to kind of force to rethink of our existence and our name even. So we decided to call the organization CoCulture, pointing out that the two culture meeting as well, emphasizing on the differences, because I don't believe in integration in the sense of melting into one another, but celebrating our differences. I can be who I am, you can be who you are, and we can still find language and find way to celebrate you and celebrate me, celebrate your culture and celebrate my culture. So this is where we felt co-culture. It's like it's a third kind of a space or third identity of culture, of celebrating our co-culture or the cultures coming together. And then when we had the body, the legal body, the Verein, that moment I start thinking a little bit bigger, like how can we think in a bigger picture, how can we support artist work? So as I mentioned, Syria Cultural Index is one of the projects. It's an online platform that allows artists to create their presentation and their profile. We provide them with opportunity, we present their work to the world, especially because it's one place, right? It will be all like in one place. And it will become analytical tool, so we'll understand how many we are, where we live, how many male, how many female, how many young, how many old, how many painter, how many filmmaker, which will help any third party to design better program if they want to support Syrians. And the idea, hopefully, if the platform gets successful, is to shift it to other nations who has the same need, like in Yemen and Libya and many places, and each country kind of become responsible for their branch, hopefully, if the platform will be successful. And that will help us, or that shift us kind of to the second project, which is Syrian Biennale. The idea, we never had a Biennale in Syria, and we thought to establish a Syrian Biennale that will follow the refugee routes. So each edition will take a place in different country, from Lebanon to Turkey to Balkan roads and to what's called Balkan roads and to Germany and elsewhere. Our third project is called Support the Supporters. We try to support artists who have a threat because of their practice. So if you are under threat in your country, we can facilitate your shifting to a new place, like coming to Germany, for example, if you need a safe haven. So through cooperation with different organizations like Martin Roth Initiative, Protect Defenders, Artists at Risk Connection, different organizations, we try to support artists to relocate them, to take them out of the threat they have. At the same time, we kind of have a little bit personalized support, where we go in the journey with artists and their practice where they are today and try to support them, to give them the opportunity maybe to develop their idea to become organization as well. So, because the whole idea of co-culture is to reclaim the narrative, right? Reclaim our needs and finding solution through our own perspective. So it's a community project, because most of the project that exists today, it's us seeing from outside. You know, I don't want to put it in any specific way, but it's a Western perspective to our needs. You know, sometimes, and sorry for that, it's white perspective to our needs as well, like how being seen through very specific lenses. But then how can we claim our own stories and tell it from our own perspective without being invited to a panel with this topic or that, etc. And the idea with Support the Supporter is giving the artist knowledge that they can develop their ideas to become institutions here, and then they can support other artists as well. Last project was a CoCulture space in Wedding. We had a nice space where we try to make it as a community space, so people can present their self, can present their artwork, and can host different events. So this is what CoCulture is.
So many different initiatives,
yes,
are all combined, and everybody who wants to know more about it can see it on the website of CoCulture.de. So, could you tell us about the project or artistic work you are working on right now?
I'm wearing two hats. I have the organizational hat, the cultural manager, and the artist hat. I'm still working every day in the organization and its project, which is mainly like, hopefully we'll release the index at the end of the summer. We finished the research phase of the Biennale, and now we are moving to fundraising and implementation in the next period. We don't have a space anymore. It was a little bit too much to run so many projects at the same time. We still hosting or trying to support artists through Support the Supporters program. This is from CoCulture side. And on my artistic or my studio side, I'm working on also several projects. To make it short, or to put it in short, so there's a project I really like a lot, and I didn't present it. It's so I stopped painting, right? I used to be a painter. I educated, or my education was very much painting background. I didn't have any other knowledge, except of course when I came here and developed, like through the 2 masters I did. But when I discovered conceptual art, I kind of thought it's very interesting because I felt I have more freedom to do and experience different material and topic. But then I decided to come back to painting. So what I'm doing now, I'm doing one painting. It's not so big, and I'm painting over and over the same painting. So whenever it's ready, I take a photo, then I continue painting on it. So it will be ready basically when I die. Like that's the moment when it's done, right? And this is I felt like it's the nice solution of keep my connection to coming where I come from artistically, but at the same time I'm like shifting my practice or diversing my practice to do different things. I'm working on a project that connected to the German Constitution and the perception of culture and constitution in different countries, specifically in Germany. I'm working on a project talking about legal system that in Denmark I'm commissioned to do a project that deals specifically with starvation and how the state use siege in different parts of Syria as a political tool of torture. So there's several projects that I think will come out this year.
So thank you very much. Maybe the very last question, is there a chance for you, or can you think about the possibility to go back to Syria?
I would love to. I mean, I wasn't there since 2011, the last time when I was there. I would love to have the chance to go back. I mean, CoCulture, I think, will have its own real or complete life when it will be both sides CoCulture, right? When it existed there, invited not only German artists but other artists to be hosted in Syria and also to know about the culture there and the other way around. But I don't think I will have an interest to go back enter this when this regime is still under power.
So thank you very much being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
To talk to you.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Everything, alles Gute für die Zukunft. Everything good for the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.